Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. Historic archival heritage video of the 1996 Bhikkhunī Upasampada higher ordination in Sarnath, Isipathana, Deer Park, outside Varanasi, site of the Buddha's first teaching, turning the wheel of the Dhamma, Dhammacakkappavattana. For the 25-year anniversary, this is a commemorative heritage showing. I'm Bhikkhuni Tathālokā, Theri, offering this at the invitation of the Maha Bodhi Society of India and Anagarika Dhammapala Institute of Pāli Studies Sarnath on behalf of the United Theravada Bhikkhuni Sangha International. Greetings to all dear venerables and most venerables of the Maha Bhikkhuni Maha Sangha, to all Dhamma friends, brothers and sisters, kin in Dhamma around the world. I'd like to express my special gratitude before we begin to Most Venerable Bhikkhuni Sangha, Korean Bhikkhu Pavatini of the 1996 Sarnath Isipathana ordination, for providing this video on request from her personal archives at Bomyangsa Temple in Seoul, and to Professor Eunsu Cho of Shakyadita, Korea, for having the aged heritage VHS video digitalized and for sharing it with us on this special anniversary. An important note of understanding: this commemorative heritage video was recorded by and for the 108 members of the Korean Bhikkhu Maha Sangha of the World Buddhist Sangha Council, who gathered in Sarnath in the Deer Park at Isipathana on 8th December 1996, together with a large number of Korean lay devotee pilgrims who joined with leaders of the Maha Bodhi Society of India and Theravada Bhikkhu Sangha from around the world, in partnership with the leaders of Shakyadita, Sri Lanka. Due to being prepared in commemoration for the Korean Sangha and pilgrims, it focuses on the Korean Sangha elements of the ordination and does not include the elements with Sri Lankan Theravada Sangha or the English language commemorative speeches offered by international Sangha members, including Venerable Vipulasara Thero and Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma. The archives of the Maha Bodhi Society of India and personal archives of the bhikkhunis who were ordained in 1996 may contain more of this heritage information, which was not accessible to us due to pandemic. We begin now at the Dhammak Stupa, also known as the Dhammika Stupa, the site of the Buddha's first teaching in Sarnath, Isipathana, Deer Park, on 8th December 1996. You can see this is December 8th, 1996 in Sarnath. The ordination Sima area is being set up. Here we're going to take a look at the Korean Bhikkhu Sangha in the pre-ordination grand parade. Unlike in other East Asian traditions, which use gray for their lay people and novices and use various shades of saffron, yellow, orange, and brown for those fully ordained, Korean bhikkhus and bhikkhunis use gray for the underrobes of all fully ordained bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, originally using charcoal dye. In 1996, they still use dark brown saffron for their kasa or sangati robes. In the Jogye order, they now use a lighter saffron brown color kasa or sangati. Only ordination masters, the bhikkhu and bhikkhuni preceptors and principal acharyas use full-colored ceremonial robes only for the time of ordinations. Gold for bhikkhu preceptors in gratitude to China, and saffron rust for bhikkhuni preceptors in gratitude to Sri Lanka. This is what I was told by senior bhikkhus when I was in Korea in the early 90s. We see here 5 leaders or Nayakas of the Korean Bhikkuni Sangha. Attending Bhikkhuni Sangha from Korea came from 2 leading Korean Bhikkhuni orders. Pictured here are 5 great Bhikkhuni abbesses from the Jogye order and its Bomunjong and Sunhakwan branches. We see they're led in the parade here by a Korean national Bhikkhuni ordination master of the Jogye order, Ji Hyung Snim, followed by abbesses Kyungjin Snim, Borim Snim, and Do-un Snim, together with Bokjong Snim of the Bomunjong branch of the Jogye order. This is the Sri Lankan section of the parade. The 10 candidates with Venerable Vipulasara Thero and Ranjani de Silva. This is further Sri Lankan part of the parade, the 10 candidates again with Venerable Vipulasara Thero and Ranjani de Silva of Shakyatītha, Sri Lanka. What a momentous moment this must have been for them. Here we see the late former patriarch, the spiritual head of the order of the Korean Jogye order, Most Venerable Bhikkhu So-am Snim. Chanting the name of Shakyamuni Buddha with the Korean wooden fish. Here we see the Korean Kwanam order Sangha, male Sangha, using gray underrobes and golden yellow color kasa Sangati robes. The leaders, Nayakas of 5 orders of the Korean Bhikkhu Sangha. On the Korean Buddhist side, the restoration of Sri Lankan Bhikkhuni ordination lineage was also the lifeblood of Bhikkhu Vinaya Master Ja-un Snim, who together with Li-hyun Snim had been dedicated to revival of the monastic Sangha since the purification movement in Korean Buddhism. On December 8, 1996, the ordination ceremony was held with great energy, led by the top 3 great leading bhikkhu masters, with the late bhikkhu head of the Jogye order, So-am Snim, as preceptor, the late Jogye order general secretary, bhikkhu Li-hyun Snim, as instructing acharya, and the protecting precepts department chief, bhikkhu Bongju, as karmacharya. The 7 witness master bhikkhus were Haeun Snim, Sayo Snim, Hyunchol Snim of the Jogye order, the Kwanam order general secretary Hyungpa Snim, the Chante order general secretary Undok Snim, the Wanyong order general secretary Ilgong Snim, and the general secretary of the Changhwa order Namjong Snim also were present and witnessed, supported the ordination. This is a quote, and it's been published by Ji-un Snim's research in 2020. Share the link here. Some of the Korean faithful lay supporters and devotees who joined this pilgrimage and historic ordination program wearing Korean traditional dress or hanbok. Ten attending members of the Korean Kwanam-jong Order Sangha, the women's female Sangha, wearing gray underrobes and yellow kasa sangati robes, the same robes as the Kwanam Order male Sangha members we just saw earlier. Certifying the contributions of Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha. It may be noted that the Korean pilgrimage records, as reviewed by Professor Eun-Soo Cho and Yujong Snim of the Jogye Order Korean National Bhikkhuni Association, show 100 Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni Sangha members participating in elements of this great revival ordination program, at least 18 of whom have been identified as Korean Bhikkhunis. I mention this because some sources and interviews have said there were maybe only 2 or 3 Korean Bhikkhunis present. However, the Korean video and Korean records clearly show otherwise. The reason for this may be that Sri Lankan people sometimes have difficulty visually distinguishing Korean Bhikkhunis from bhikkhus due to strong inculturation to greater visual gender distinctions in dress in Sri Lankan culture, even in Buddhist monasticism. In fact, eminent Bhikkhuni leaders, abbesses, and national ordination teachers of several schools within the Jogye order participated, as we've seen, together with 10 female Sangha members of the Korean Kwanam order, shown in the parade leading up to the ordination. Highest level Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha participation and support. The 10 female Sangha members of the Korean Kwanam Bhikkhuni order were led by Kyungchul Snim, the president of the Kwanam Bhikkhuni Association, offering her assistance and support, together with the Kwanam Bhikkhuni Association vice president Gyungwan Snim, noting that they use the Romanized spelling for Kwanam here, as we see following. The order itself uses this spelling. What I've used earlier is the standard transliteration. It's noteworthy that 25 years later, Most Venerable Gyungchul Snim and Gyungwan Snim continue to lead the Korean Kwanam Bhikkhuni Association. We can see a screenshot of the order's website showing the diagram of their leadership here on the right. The parade begins to arrive to the Sarnath Isipathana Deer Park Sima, which was purified, established by the Sangha prior to the ordination. After the arrival of the Bhikkhu Bhikkhuni Upato Maha Sangha, with the backdrop of the Dhammak Stupa, the Korean Bhikkhuni Pavatini leads the 10 candidates to the Sima. On the screen in Korean it says Nokyawan, which means Deer Park. It's Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuman, 10 of the candidates. We can see the support of the Theravada Sangha. So the candidates arrive wearing white, led by Korean Maha Bhikkhuni, Most Venerable Bhikkhuni Pavatini Sangwan Sunim, carrying their alms bowls. It may be noted that it's a distinctive Sri Lankan Theravada tradition differing from the Korean Sangha tradition, but respectfully accommodated here. Just prior to full ordination, for both men and women to return to white again, very briefly, before undertaking the samanera or seminary precepts again, directly before requesting and receiving full bhikkhu or bhikkhuni ordination. The Dhammaka stupa is in the background. Venerable Bhikkhuni Sangha is leading together with her 2 bhikkhuni assistants, followed by the 10 Sri Lankan bhikkhuni ordination candidates, led by our late Nayakas Theri, Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma, and escorted by another assisting Korean bhikkhuni and Shakyadita Sri Lanka president and co-organizer, Maha Upasika, Madam Ranjani De Silva. White-robed Sri Lankan candidates arrive in the Sima, guided by Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha and her 10 Korean bhikkhuni assistants. An announcement is made in Korean that the ordination will commence after 5 minutes. Korean Bhikkhu Sangha leaders, Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha leaders, and Sri Lankan International Theravada Bhikkhu Sangha leaders are seen seated together as the camera pans from left to right. Shakyadita Sri Lanka President Maha Upasika, Madam Ranjani De Silva, is seen here with the Sri Lankan candidates and the Korean bhikkhuni assistants. Per Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma, first the Sri Lanka Bhikkhu Sangha administered the seminary Pabaja and Sikha in the Pāli tradition, followed by Upasampada, full ordination, performed per the Korean Dharmacakkappavattana tradition. We can see here that the ordination was attended not only by international Sri Lankan Bhikkhu Sangha, but also by more than 10 members of the Indian Bhikkhu Sangha. Recitation of the Bhikkhuni precepts and Anusavana in Korean. We can hear the new Sri Lankan Bhikkhunis saying the Korean equivalent of the Pāli, Amma Bhante. Yes, I will uphold these precepts in Korean. Time of donning the Korean Bhikkhuni robes, with the assistance of the Korean Bhikkhuni assisting Acharyanis. The supporters of Pavahatini Sangwansanim's temple offered the robes, while the Bomun order Bhikkhuni Acharyani, Bopjong Sanim's supporters offered the Korean alms bowls. Patra in Korean is paru.
이제 선제 해탈의 요신이 무한 복진이여 오시오 아버자노제 사사야 아버제 사사야 사바.
The candidates first donned saffron Korean Bhikkhuni robes. Their Korean robes and bowls prepared and offered by the Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha. Incense is used to make a small precepts mark on the left forearm, not on the head as in the Chinese traditions. Noting afterwards that evening at the Mulaganda Kuti Vihara at the Anagarika Dhammapala Sima, Sri Lankan Theravada robes and bowls were offered by Sri Lankan Most Venerable Agamaha Pandita Walpula Piyananda Thero, known to us as Bhante Piyananda. And with the blessings and affirmation of the assembled International Theravada Bhikkhu Sangha, the Theravada robes were donned by the new Bhikkhunis. Korean Maha Bhikkhunī Upasampadā, in Korean, Unsa, which means compassionate teacher. Most Venerable Sangwan Sunim, also known by her passport name as Bang Jusok.
한 생각을 바로 모아서 현상 보도하는 이러한 수승 상근기다. 여러분이야말로 인도에 뿌려졌던 비구니 세력을 이어가지고 이 나라에 영원히 뿌려지지 않는 비구니 그 대상을.
We can see them holding their ordination certificates. Most Venerable Sangwan Sunim with hands in Anjali, while the Korean late Patriarch Soam Sunim gives Ovada Dhammadesana exhortation to the new Bhikkhunis in Korean. Sunim is short for Sungbonim, which means Venerable Sankharatana, Venerable Jewel of the Sangha. The new Bhikkhunis are seen holding their ordination certificates while listening to the Ovada.
한 생각을 바로 모아서 현상 보도하는 이러한 수승 상근기다. 여러분이야말로 인도에 뿌려졌던 비구니 세력을 이어가지고 이 나라에 영원히 뿌려지지 않는.
Post-ordination speeches. The General Secretary of the Korean Jogye Order, Ui Han Sunim, was an important organizer for the World Buddhist Sangha Council Korean branches.
이제 한 씨앗을 뿌리는 겁니다. 참으로 이분들이 갈 길이 험합니다. 참으로 어떻게 이겨서 이겨나가서 우리 불법을 이 땅에 다시 심을까? 참으로 제가 눈물이 납니다.
General Secretary of the Korean Jogye Order, Bhikkhu Ui Han Sunim, is the ordination instructing Acharya. He's saying that it brings tears to his eyes, the bravery of these 10 women from Sri Lanka to go ahead with such faith and courage, entrusting their lives to full living the Buddha's way, not knowing what will become of them afterwards when they return to their home country. He heartily asks that all those attending deeply sympathize and appreciate such depth of commitment, faith, and bravery.
이제 한 씨앗을 뿌리는 겁니다. 참으로 이분들이 갈 길이 험합니다. 참으로 어떻게 이겨서 이겨나가서 우리 불법을 이 땅에 다시 심을까? 참으로 제가 눈물이 납니다.
눈물이 납니다 means it brings tears to my eyes. The post-ordination speeches continue. We see that 10 members of Himalayan or Tibetan traditions also came to witness this great event.
Monks and teachers, and there's two on a very, very sacred place where Buddha gave.
A post-ordination commemorative photos event. 10 new Sri Lankan Bhikkhunis with Korean Bhikkhu Bhikkhuni Maha Sangha and Pavatini in the center.
과거에 우리 서머니 부처님께서 우리 중생을
Post-ordination, great multi-tradition reception with Korean Bhikkhu Bhikkhuni Maha Sangha, with recognition of the ordination from great masters of a multiplicity of Buddhist traditions. Venerable Vipula Thero is seen sitting in the center in orange robes.
Now we begin second chapter and the ordination ceremony. Distinguished guests,
Venerable Walpolapiyananda Thero, sitting next to Venerable Andawela Devasiri Thero, both very important in this. Venerable Walpolapiyananda Thero is on the right in orange, and just in the center you can barely see his face there. Venerable Andawela Devasiri Thero in the middle. And the General Secretary of the Quanam Order is sitting on the viewer's left. Venerable Devasiri offered the Anusavana, the traditional post-ordination instruction from the Pāli text Theravada tradition following the Bhikkhuni ordination. He served as the new Bhikkhuni's teacher of Bhikkhuni Vinaya for their next 2 years post-ordination studies and training in Sarnath with the Maha Bodhi Society. We'll see him again. Shakyadita International Association of Buddhist Women President Emeritus, Venerable Karma Lakshe Somo, attended the ordination, together with Venerable Dhammavijaya and Sayale Molini. They're from Nepal and Burma. After the Bhikkhuni ordination and reception, Korean pilgrims undertake the Bodhisattva precepts. After the reception, the attending Korean pilgrims had the opportunity to undertake the Bodhisattva precepts of the Mahayana Brahmajala Sutra. This was a separate ceremony. The Korean Bhikkhu Bhikkhuni ordination rite belongs to the so-called Hinayana, or more properly, Shravakayana, or early Buddhist tradition, not the Mahayana tradition. Korean monastic culture clearly differentiates in concept and practice between undertaking Shravakayana, monastic precepts and ordination, and undertaking Mahayana precepts. They are separate, different ceremonies. This is important to clearly understand and distinguish. Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha support from 1986 through 1996, 1997, and 1998, the Great Revival. Here we see Shakyadita International Association of Buddhist Women President Emeritus Venerable Karma Lakshe Somo attending the reception together with Venerable Dhammavijaya and Sayale Molini. Venerable Karma Lakshe Somo undertook Bhikkhuni ordination in Korea in 1986, 10 years earlier. Venerable Dhammavijaya undertook Bhikkhuni ordination the same time as Ayya Khema in 1988. Venerable Molini, shown here wearing pink Burmese Silashin robes, was so inspired, she undertook the seminary Pabaja that very evening at the Mulaganda Kuti Vihara. Here we see Bhante Piyananda and Bhante Devasiri again with Korean Bhikkhuni Pavatini Sangwansanim and her assisting Bhikkhuni Acharinis behind. Bhante Piyananda is smiling. Bhante Devasiri is on his left. Shakyadita Sri Lanka President Madam Ranjani De Silva offering a gift to the Korean Bhikkhuni Pavatini and Chief Bhikkhuni Organizer, Most Venerable Sangwan Sanim. Bhante Piyananda, now Agamaha Pandita Venerable Walpolapiyananda Nayaka Mahatero, offering his speech. As I mentioned earlier, these speeches, because they were in English, were not included other than just tiny fragments in the Korean video. Here we see Bhante Vipulasara, Venerable M. Vipulasara Thero of the Maha Bodhi Society of India and Parama Dhammacakkappavattana Institute of Sri Lanka. He was also one of the principal organizers on the side of the Maha Bodhi Society of India. Bhante Devasiri, Venerable Andawela Devasiri Thero with the Maha Bodhi Society of India, giving his speech. Bhante Devasiri, Venerable Andawela Devasiri Thero with the Maha Bodhi Society of India offered the Pāli text Anusavana for the historic ordination and subsequently served as Bhikkhuni Vinaya training teacher for the 10 new Bhikkhunis for the next 2 years with the Maha Bodhi Society in Sarnath. Here he's leading the attending Theravada Bhikkhu Sangha in auspicious blessing chanting, beginning with Namo Tassa. Samma Sambuddhassa. Bhante Vipulasara is reading the list of the names of the Buddhist orders that gathered together to support and certify this ordination. The list seems quite long, although it's cut off in the video.
Inam order, Manglam order, Chanwa order, Bhakwa order, Jingan order.
Venerable Kusuma, now a bhikkhuni, offers her post-ordination reception speech.
To keep up with this tradition of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, and I hope there is great and...
Only a few words of her speech were included in the video. She's saying, I dedicate my life to keep up this tradition of the Bhikkhuni Sangha. We see Bhante Vipulasara in the background. I'm so sorry the Korean video cuts off here. I dedicate my life to keep up this tradition of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, and I hope the ordination night program moves to Mulaganda Kuti Vihara, illuminated with lights. The chanting is of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Ordination night program moves to Mulaganda Kuti Vihara with Sri Lanka Bhikkhu Sangha offering chanting of the Buddha's first teaching, setting into motion the wheel of the Dhamma, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, together with viewing of the Buddha's sacred relics. It's here at the Mulaganda Kuti Vihara, established by Anagarika Dharmapala, after the Korean pilgrims adjourned, that the Sri Lankan and international Theravada Bhikkhu Sangha offered the robes and bowls of the Theravada tradition, prepared by Venerable Dr. Wolpolapiyananda Thero, and accepted the new Bhikkhunis into the Theravada tradition. Venerable Kolanawe Kusuma Bhikkhuni, Venerable Habarana Chandradasi Bhikkhuni, Venerable Matale Vijita Bhikkhuni, Venerable Gal Subhadra Bhikkhuni, Venerable Pandarawela Sudhamika Bhikkhuni. Venerable Paliagoda Sudarshana Bhikkhuni. Venerable Panadura Vaikada Bhadra Bhikkhuni. Venerable Basara Samma Bhikkhuni. Venerable Kurunegala Subhadra Bhikkhuni. Venerable Kurunegala Himapali Bhikkhuni. These are the 10 who received the full Bhikkhuni ordination on that most auspicious day in Sarnath at Deer Park, Isipathana, site of the Buddha's first teaching. Venerable Kamburu Nandaratana Thero. Venerable Dalale Tathālokā Thero. Venerable Walpola Piyananda Thero. Venerable Kakapaliya Anuruddha Thero. Venerable Kahawate Siddhi Sumedha Thero. Venerable Dodangoda Rewata Thero. Venerable Dediya Wala Wimala Thero. Venerable Acharya Medagama Vajirajnana Thero. Venerable Kirinda Dhammacakkappavattana Thero. Venerable Kamburu Gamoe Vajira Thero. These are the bhikkhus, venerable members of the Bhikkhu Sangha from Sri Lanka and internationally of the Theravada Bhikkhu Sangha, who offered their support and blessings for this ordination. This photo is of Venerable Bhikkhuni Sudarshana, Paliagoda Sudarshana, who is among the 10. She's sitting here in front of the Dhammak stupa, commemorating the Buddha's first teaching. Actually, she was senior most amongst all of those ordained in monastic life, but Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma was asked to be first due to her standing, education, how revered and respected she was in the communities, and her quality of leadership. We see here the new ordinees' agreement with the Maha Bodhi Society of India from 10th December 1996. We, the following signee, agreed to abide by the rules and regulations of the Maha Bodhi Society of India. And in this connection, our first meeting was held in February 1996 in Ratnamalana, Paramadhamma Chetya Pirivena, Sri Lanka, with the participation of Venerable M. Vipulasara Mahatero, President, and Venerable Dr. D. Rewata Thero, General Secretary of the Maha Bodhi Society of India. And in the said meeting, it was agreed to join the Maha Bodhi Society of India for the Buddhist missionary works, at least for 3 years at Sarnath and Bodh Gaya centers accordingly. In addition to the above, we are grateful and thankful to the Maha Bodhi Society of India for re-establishing the Bhikkhuni Sasana with the cooperation of the World Buddhist Sangha Council at Sarnath on the 8th December 1996. We 10 members of the first Bhikkhuni order agree to follow the Bhikkhuni rules, regulations, and Vinaya under the guidance of the President and General Secretary of the Maha Bodhi Society of India and under the supervision of Venerable D. Wimala Thero, Bhikkhu in charge of the Sarnath Center of the Maha Bodhi Society of India. You can see here the signatures of Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma, Venerable Chandadasi, Venerable Vijita, Venerable Bhadra, Venerable Sudhamika, Venerable Subhadra, Venerable Samma, Venerable Himapali, Venerable Subhadra. I can't see the last one. There are 10 here. Post-ordination education, training, and support from both Sri Lankan Bhikkhu Sangha and Korean Bhikkuni Sangha. In January 1998, 1 year and 2 months later, Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma was requested by organizers to come to Bodh Gaya from Sarnath to Bodh Gaya to translate for the ordination of the second group of Sri Lankan Bhikkhunis. Venerable Kusuma Theri remembers, the day after the final ceremony, all the 23 newly ordained Sinhalese Bhikkhunis came to Sarnath to meet the 10 Bhikkhunis ordained there. that is ordained earlier there, who were 1 year senior. Sri Lankan monks led by Venerable Vipulasara Thero and Venerable Siddhi Sumankala Thero organized a procession of all 33 bhikkhunis headed by Bhikkhuni Kusuma to the sima used by Venerable Anagarika Dhammapala 100 years ago. At a short Tathālokā ceremony, the Sri Lankan monks blessed the new bhikkhunis and re-established the Theravada bhikkhuni tradition after a lapse of 1,000 years. The bhikkhunis of Bodh Gaya returned to Sri Lanka and started the Dambula chapter. The Sarnath bhikkhunis took a further training of 1 year before returning to Sri Lanka. This is from Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma, Revival of the Bhikkhuni Ordination in Sri Lanka, which was published in 2020, the year before her passing away. The photos are from the 1998 Bhikkhuni ordination in Bodh Gaya from the Commemorative Ordination book. Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma is translating at the top for the 1998 ordination. The Theravada Bhikkhu Sangha is giving instruction to the Bhikkhuni candidates in the middle. Several of the leading international Theravada Bhikkhu Acharyas, including Venerable Vipulasara, Venerable Ashvaghosha of the Maha Bodhi Society of India, Venerable Dhammacakkappavattana, Venerable Sumangala Thero, Venerable Pandit Vajranyana Thero from Sri Lanka. Momentously, the Indian Bhikkhuni Sangha was also revived in 1998 in Bodh Gaya. Later in 1998, Theravada Bhikkhuni ordination began to be offered once again in Sri Lanka, from where it has now, 25 years later, grown to more than 5,000 strong and spread around the world to more than a dozen countries. In memory of Venerable Mapalagama Vipulasara Thero, passed away in 2010. In memory of Most Venerable Andawela Devasiri Thero of the Maha Bodhi Society of India, who passed away in 2020. And in memory of Venerable Bhikkhuni Kusuma, Nayakas Theri, who passed away on the 28th of August, 2021, of the coronavirus, just shortly before her 25-year anniversary as a bhikkhuni. Thank you very much to the Maha Bodhi Society of India, the Anagarika Dhamapala Institute of Buddhist Studies and Pāli Studies, and to the United Theravada Bhikkhuni Sangha International. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Ratanataya.